Hi there, just wanted to take a minute to walk through the Colab file where I load CSV data into my Python program. So here's the example file that you can see on my screen. And in order to first load the data, we're going to need to actually, well, like what we're going to do here is open up a CSV file, but we need to get the CSV file into Colab first. So I'll click on this folder icon over here that says Files, and on your screen it might take a minute to open up. I just did this already a minute ago, so it opened up quickly, but yours might. Wait a minute, you know, when you see sample data, you know you're good to go. If you, and by good to go, I mean ready to upload the file. Now to upload the CSV file, you're going to push this icon that says upload to session storage. When I hover over it, it has a little arrow. And what that will do is open up a file picker for me. I'm not sure if you can see that file picker. And it gives me a reminder that this is going to get deleted after a little while. That's okay. That's just sort of the way that Colab works. And now you can see I have this skyscraper CSV file here. Now, one common mistake here is that people are looking for this up arrow, and instead of this one up here, which is the correct one, you accidentally push this little up arrow. Of course, they have two up arrows right next to each other. Come on, Google. And if you click that, then you get to this long list of directories and folders, and there's no recovering from this. So if you accidentally click that wrong arrow, then just reload your page. Okay, I'm not sure. There we go. Yeah, reload the tab, and then come back here again, and do it again, and click the correct up button there. So anyway, now I have my skyscraper CSV file here, and I'm going to close this little side window, and this is the code that's going to load that into my Python program. Just a real brief walkthrough of the code. We have an import statement here, which is going to import the CSV library, which gives us access to some commands related to processing CSV files. And then I'll create a new variable called file and assign it to what I find when I open something called skyscrapers.csv. So this is not actually like the CSV data yet. It's just like a file object that gives me access to that file. And then I create another variable called rows, and this is a list of the things that are in the file. And don't worry about all this stuff right now, but that basically just means like create a list out of everything in the file. One row in the file is one item in my list. And then I have this print statement, loaded blank rows of data, and you can see when I run it here, that was left over from before. It loaded 2,000 rows of data. Now, you may not be familiar with this F statement here, printing F strings. This is called an F string in Python. You know, classically, you would print something like this, and you know, it would be like plus len rows, right, using concatenation, and then you would run this and find like, oh, there's an error because I'm trying to add like, well, actually there's an error because I forgot plus, because I'm trying to add strings and integers together, and you know, so F strings are a good way to solve that sort of data type mismatch that we often run into when printing. So I'll put an F. Here's how you do F strings. I'll put an F right before the opening quotation mark. F means like formatted, so we're going to print a formatted string here, and then we have this whole thing just as one string, but think of it as like a blank in the string where we're going to print a number that's inserted. So loaded blank rows of data. Now, what's the variable that actually gives me the rows of data? I'm going to put that between curly braces. So my blank is actually, instead of underscores, I need curly braces in here, and that shows like, hey, tells Python between these curly braces, I'm going to put a Python expression. I'm going to put a variable, or I'm going to put a little math problem, anything that's like Python code, and then when it gets printed, that little bit will run. So I could do something like 2 + 2. So I loaded 2 + 2 rows of data, and now it's going to say I loaded 4 rows of data. Of course, it's not actually how many rows of data I loaded. It's because I told it to print 2 plus 2. So instead, I'm going to print, I wanted the length of the rows, right? So that's the len function rows. So it's, I'm going to highlight something that should look familiar. So that should look familiar to you, right? Like the length of a list is len, and then the list in parentheses, and all of that goes between these 2 curly braces. And now when I run it, Python sees the f string, says loaded, it says, it reaches that first curly brace, it says, oh, there's going to be a Python expression here, evaluates that Python expression, and then continues printing here. So that's how we get that. All right, so a little sidetrack on f strings. That's done now. And then I say there are a lot of rows in this data set, so I'll just print the first 5. I'm not doing any data processing right now, I'm just printing the data that I loaded. And so you can see in this next block of code here are the first, just a print statement here, the first 5, that's where it printed. And then for a row, in rows 0 through 5, so this is going to slice the first 5 items out of that row. And then for each one of those, print the row. And that's what I see. That's what I see here. And you know, if you wanted to print all of your rows, you just wouldn't do the slicing there. You could push the play button and certainly print all of your rows. I avoided that because it just ends up giving me this really long list. And then when I scroll down and then I try to scroll back up, and then I got 2 scroll bars over here, see, like this one and this one. To me, I just find that kind of confusing. And so I prefer to just print like the top of the data. How about even like 2 rows of data, just to see, like to make sure I got some data, see what it looks like. I'll put it back to 5 because that's what the statement says there. Okay, so that's it for loading a CSV file.